Welcome. This is part two of our investment and ethnicity webinar. Part one looked at the maturity matrix and how to fill it in. Part two, we're going to look at some of the insights we've learned from the matrix and also speak to Mubeen Quadir from Lloyds Banking Group about how to deal with an economic downturn with regards to ethnicity, and also look at what Lloyds Banking Group are doing within this climate. Yeah, and I think just echoing what Homer's said, I think now's a time where we need to be as adaptable as we can. But what we can't do is take our foot off the pedal because of essentially we've come quite a long way in the last 2 or 3 years in respect to how ethnicity has now got a place at the table at least, and it's given some level of investment, if not, and we can't have that going backwards, nor the hard work we've done. So just to look at the past 2 years of the maturity matrix and how we can take some of the data and look at some of the insights we have. Going back to board and allies, senior sponsors and champions, I'm sure most of you have one within your organization, if not a couple, who champion ethnicity. And we found 93% of those who completed the matrix have a senior sponsor. One of the things we found, which was an issue, was only 44% of senior champions were effective within the workplace and influenced wider business. We spoke to quite a few organizations that were members as part of their consultation, and it seemed like there was a lack of engagement or knowing what senior sponsors should do. We spent the first part of this year interviewing people and doing a workshop around producing an allies guide that looked at what is it you should do to be an ally, and then what sort of points should you do to become a champion. The other problems that were cited was a lack of engagement due to the fear of having honest conversations around race. And that's been an issue since we started this journey, and it's still, there's still, like, especially at sort of senior levels, an issue with how to communicate race, which is quite astonishing, really. So we're trying to put more tools in place and trying to help make people feel more comfortable with that. 82% of senior teams did not have any form of accountability. So that's like KPIs that include diversity inclusion, but also have a lens of ethnicity within that. And we found accountability, the companies that have got good data and have got good accountability within their senior teams, we're actually seeing quite effective progress around this agenda. 67% didn't reference steps to improve ethnicity within their annual reports and include that. So I know Homer spoke about a strategy, there wasn't references within annual reports. So just what we've seen organizations do around this area, we found it's really important that lived experiences of BAME colleagues is really important as communicating that to senior teams. Having good data sets, obviously, having good data that's usable and visible, which sometimes wasn't the case, is important to showcase what the issues are, and senior teams and world execs do like to have data. And also we will be still producing our allies guide, which will be coming out in the summer. So going on to data and policy, obviously at the beginning of last year, we were talking about ethnicity pay gap reporting, and the consultation happened, which is kind of on the back burner, but we have seen an increase. Even though policy and data is our weakest area in the matrix, we have seen an increase in organizations that are starting the journey on data. So 41% of organizations are collecting data. Oh, it's the weakest thing. 41% of that section was completed. 50% of organizations are now collecting ethnicity data, which is an increase of 8% on this year, which is great to hear. 33% though were utilizing their ethnicity data, which basically means they either didn't have good enough disclosure rates to be able to utilize their data properly, or they were just collecting it and it wasn't visible or usable in any way. So they're probably on the start of their journey. But we've done quite a lot of work around disclosure rates and around communication around data and making sure the messaging is correct. So if you do need more information about how to effectively collect data, please do let us know. So only 26% said data was aligned to pay grade, which is like a quarter. We've seen more organisations, and we've got resources on our website which show the organisations that have voluntarily disclosed ethnicity pay gap reporting, and they've normally aligned it to their gender pay gap. We've got a list of companies and their reports on our website. If you do want, we can send that afterwards. Data is obviously essential for measuring growth and evolution and anticipating mandatory requirements for EPG reporting. But what data also does is we found that it pinpoints where areas are within the organisation that need to be focused on. So you're not trying to blanket the whole organisation. You're trying to make sustainable change in areas where it's most needed. And 55% of organisations, this is a rise on last year, had carried out an employee survey which now included ethnicity questions within it. Moving on to culture and inclusion, and the main bit that we looked at was inclusion training. There's 19% of organisations offered it to all employees in some form, and that could be e-learning, unconscious bias training, or weaved into their inclusive leadership programs. 81% did not offer it to all their employees. There was some way to go, so they had no experience of inclusion training. 92% offered it to some though, so they would offer it to a percentage of their employees, maybe senior teams. What we also found on feedback around inclusion training is that where people were using things like unconscious bias, it was helping awareness that there was what's next happening. So even though people were becoming aware they had biases, and especially around ethnicity and race, there wasn't actually an action plan of what to do next. So some of the inclusion training feedback was that it wasn't actually effective in creating any sustainable change. So one in three organisations have now included an ethnicity focus within their inclusion training, because a lot of inclusion training was quite general. Moving on to employee life cycle, which looks all the way from recruitment to progression. 2/3 didn't ensure BAME staff were represented on talent programs or didn't have a dedicated program to support BAME talent. So one of the biggest issues that was cited back to us was that there wasn't enough progression, there wasn't enough senior faces and therefore role models within organisations. So, but then we were quite shocked to hear how many didn't actually invest in making sure that BAME staff and employees were put on talent programs or represented, or there was specific talent programs to help them progress. 1 in 5, only 1 in 5, so 20% of companies implement sponsorship, and we've also heard that sponsorship can be a very effective way to help accelerate progression for employees, and that's only 1 in 5 that implemented sponsorship that was targeted at ethnic minority groups. So we've seen less measures implemented within employee life cycle, and that's an area which we're trying to encourage, we're trying to encourage organisations to focus on in the next year. Right, I'd now like to hand over to Mubeen, who's helped us out and supported us from the beginning from Lloyds Banking Group. Mubeen.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Huma, for the slides earlier. And hello all. I think this is a strange time has been shared by Huma and Sarah around what's going on in the world, and I hope you're all keeping well. I hope your families are all well. As Sarah's mentioned, since 2016 we've been working on this, and it's a crazy time for us all. But I think what we should be trying to do is continue a journey, and also think, where can we share some great practice? And I always get excited when Sarah and Huma chat to me and say, "Oh, can you help us with this?" I also get even more excited when I learn different things from other organisations. So I hope you find what we talk about useful today. And if you've got any sharing, by all means, as always, share it with us, because I think that's the greatest learning for us all. So I think what you can see on the screen is a bit of a brief background. I'm going to kind of do a disclaimer now. These are stats where there might be variations and stuff, but we've all seen the news, we've all seen what's going on in the world. And actually, when you think about the number of NHS staff that are from a BAME background, and actually the first 10 doctors to die were from a BAME background, it kind of raises a few eyebrows. When you think about the UK population actually being approximately 13%, and actually, reports are suggesting 30% of corona deaths are from a BAME background. You can give or take depending on demographic areas and so forth. And it may have gone up. I know, Shaka, you kind of shared NHS data there. I got my stats from a 2018 data Google thingy, so I apologise if it is incorrect. But it wouldn't surprise me if it's 44%. And I think the UK workforce, again, suggesting depending which data you look at, is 23%. But actually, when you look at some stats out there, approximately 25% of BAME people don't share their mental health conditions and issues. So when you think about the world that we're in and coronavirus and the uncertainty it brings, I think it's really important for all organisations to support their colleagues in the right way, whether they're from a BAME or non-BAME background as well. So then when you think about actually how do you keep things going, when you look at the next slide and what we're trying to kind of share with you, and you're probably going to think, well, one of my stats doesn't look like a stat or an incomplete box, but I'll come to that in just a second, is you probably still want to make the changes. So things like the matrix and where we're trying to go, and actually when you think about the kind of the staged process that Huma has referred to, and actually that planned roadmap, I think it's really important that you kind of take the point of review and rethink, because that's the really important part for all organisations. And at Lloyds, we're doing very much the same approach in kind of adapting our plans, while we're continuing to think about our group strategy, because again, that's really important. So Lloyds Banking Group strategy is to help Britain prosper. Actually, this is probably the most unique time for us to actually think about how do we actually really help Britain full stop, and then think about the prosper. And that's our local communities, that's our customers, but also our colleagues as well. When we think about our employee relations group and actually chairing our network called the Reach Network, we still continue to think about our focuses, because we shouldn't lose that in this time. So our three main focus areas are around inclusivity, visibility and development. But then you're thinking about what impact that has to our colleagues. And actually, colleagues now need the support and guidance in uncertain times. And I think we should all be taking our opportunity to think, how do we support them, whether they have families, whether they don't have families, whatever their diverse background. But also thinking about actually, when you think about they may be BAME, actually they might have caring responsibilities, they might have disabilities, and it's really important that actually they may then suffer more. And then my third point around actually of BAME workforce makes up the UK workforce, well, we've suggested to 23%. In Lloyds Banking Group, it's approximately 10, and other organisations have something around 18, some are lower than sub 5%. But the important part is they make up a population of our workforce that's going through something right now. And one of the things that's always really important for us to think about is, well, what those things that we're looking at. So across Lloyds Banking Group, we kind of do it in three ways. We're continuing the right messaging and activity. So, we have activity around role models lists that we're still continuing to launch. We had a podcast last week for Easter where we brought different diverse backgrounds in, and actually we had to film it and video it and do communications and talking all in different locations. But we continue that, and it's got some great number of hits as well locally. But it creates a bit of an environment where people feel safe. We're then thinking about actually safe talk, should I say. We're then thinking about, continuing to work more closely with our cultural plans and embed I&D at a time of change. So this is the crucial moment for us to kind of think about cultural plans that we have across Lloyds Banking around our colleagues, about our line managers, about our staff. And actually, with this time, as much as there's lots of stuff that becomes more business priority, this is a time where actually you can embed I&D better, because it's almost like a reset in some shape or form, that you can come out of this going, there's so much change, what can we do slightly differently, and actually bring it to the forefront. And then the other part is actually for us across Lloyds Banking Group, all the different diverse network groups are working more closely together on combined activity. So we all wanted to go out with a message to our members, but actually we've got a more staggered approach to our communications. We're doing video blogs as chairs to all the networks to support them at this time of need. We're also creating kind of small webinars and stuff. So like this one today, every morning, one of the networks is doing a wellbeing network, a wellbeing seminar, just to help everyone with mindfulness. We're then thinking about things like our development as well. So converting some of our development courses into online modular courses to keep people engaged, but actually while those are working from home, actually they then get a sense of community as well. So those are just some of the things that we're working towards and doing. Likewise, we're still thinking about data, we're still thinking about MI, we're still looking at some of our leaders' reports and thinking, well, actually, how do we adapt what we do for a time that is unprecedented? But actually, when you think about using a time that is uncertain, it's our chance to embed and deliver some new change, and that's where the key is for us. So I probably want to pause there. I probably raced on in the amount of stuff that I've said, and I hand over to Sarah.
Hi, so we're moving on, and just to echo what Mubeen's saying, I know these are really difficult times for people, but essentially there's also an opportunity here as well. Like from speaking to different organisations at the moment, they're using this as an opportunity as well. And just to echo what Mubeen's saying, to like give back to different groups within their organisations. So looking at career progression and how it can be changed to do that remotely, looking at sort of training remotely now, like, and looking at this time of change for some people as an opportunity, like to engage and keep their employees engaged. So, you know, I'd urge to look at those options as well. We're moving on now to our Q&A. Fiona, have we got any questions at the moment?
Yes, we have indeed. I'd like to say to all attendees, if you want to ask some questions rather, then you can do through the questions and answer box. We have one in that's just literally popped in at the last minute that said, can you share how many companies have completed the maturity matrix already in 2018 and 2019?
Yeah, so the figures for 2018 were 60 companies completed it, and last year we had over 100 companies complete it, so we've done it for 2 years. We've also been speaking, there's a pipeline of organisations who have used the matrix to influence their strategy and what they're doing, but they didn't submit it officially. So we know that more organisations are actually using the recommendations, and it's a document which we've run for 3 years, and next year we're looking at revising and updating.
Brilliant. We have another question again on sort of the data, and it's about how many companies within the pharmaceutical sector have completed it.
God, if you give me the name of who it is, I can actually.
Yeah, we can follow that up.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but I know there's a couple of companies, but I wouldn't say we were heavy. I would say most of the companies, not even public sector, we've got mostly banks, like most of the banks complete it, professional services. So it's the organizations which are more advanced that seem to fill it in. And then we have like sort of a good spread of different industries, but I wouldn't say we have like a heavy amount of pharmaceutical companies. I would say that the city are pretty much leading the way on doing the matrix and filling it out. We have most of those organizations.
Okay. We've had a question about, will you be sending around the slides, especially Sarah's summary of last year's results?
Yep, we can send those around, no problem.
And we have another one here for Mubeen, really. How can we as organisations support BAME people in and outside our companies?
Thank you. So I think I'll start with within. I think it's just understanding your colleagues and where they sit and actually the impacts that they might be facing from the current situation. Outside of your organisation, I think the bit that we probably need to focus on is what you can be doing in your local communities. How do you support your customers if you're a customer-facing organisation? But more importantly, actually, sometimes it comes from the passion that you have from within. I mean, we've seen across Lloyds Banking Group, a lot of our members, but also our colleagues, start doing some amazing work, whether it be just giving, whether it be kind of tying up their charity kind of running or activities into some really fun, exciting things, where we've had one colleague, their son watched Spider-Man, and he wanted to kind of climb the amount of steps that we the height off one of the buildings in New York. So really great stuff that then supports the NHS as well. So loads of stuff.
Yeah, so it's a good chance for engagement, isn't it, in a sense, because people are coming together and uniting a bit. So it's trying to think how that can lend itself to this situation.
So we have another one for Mubeen. What are the themes, focus, topics of your podcasts at Lloyds? What kind of development courses? Are they banking related?
So the themes of our podcast range, so the ones that we do within our specific BAME network are more predominantly around different cultures, different festivals. So we've done Easter, we've talked about Diwali, but we've also talked about Chinese New Year. But we're trying to broaden those out now and start bringing in the mental health aspect and actually some of the disabilities. And then the other part of your question in terms of actually the focus areas, we probably more focus on things around inclusivity, and I guess it's what you want to know. So I don't know if there's some idea that you're thinking that you want me to share. More than happy to kind of help as well. I'm one of those people that sharing is caring. That's what I believe in.
And we're also looking, because of obviously we had our future leaders track within the workshops we do as well, and we're looking at how we can better support our members by bringing that online, and also from speaking to different a lot of the ERGs are actually picking up the gauntlet and running quite innovative different things, like ways of engaging different members of the organisation and meeting new members of the organisation that they would never have met. This was the feedback we're getting, they would never have met if they were not in a lockdown situation. So you know, there's different things coming back from this, and I think it's like I said, it's about being adaptable and trying to think how can we engage our colleagues and support them through this time.
Yeah, and in terms of the WebExes we're doing, in terms of the training sessions, the development sessions, they're all more soft skills related, majority, but some are capability based on kind of our group agendas. But a lot of it tends to come to, as Sarah mentioned, like career confidence and actually career progression. So actually, how do we support them around interview skills? How do we support them around kind of personal branding? How do we support them around actually how to fill in our internal job application and stuff, but also writing a good CV? And it's all stuff that sometimes we all think is probably generic, but when you focus them on a particular diverse group, you get more understanding of what their struggles and challenges and the barriers and myths are to be able to help them overcome it.
Yeah. And I think like as well, the wellness side of it for everybody is, you know, something that seems to be becoming more prominent. Like obviously it's not just dealing with grief, it's dealing with different scenarios and change, but it's also dealing with isolation as well, because a lot of people in London are single, living on their own, and it's dealing with that as well and giving tips and stuff. And we're planning to do a lot more stuff remotely on that and how to engage different people. So watch this space. And if anyone's got any feedback or suggestions and ways that they think might help bring people together, we're looking to do different things, which is just like open to everybody, that can bring people together and maybe help give them some tips and reassurance around this period of time. Because I think the mental health side of it is going to be, and the wellness side is going to be a big focus, like coming up throughout this period.
Great, thank you for that. The next question we have is, how do you address smaller budgets or recruitment freeze around D&I in these times? When companies have to be more mindful of their spending, D&I seems to drop in the business priorities.
Mm-hmm. Huma, do you want to come in on this? Or well, I'll lead off, and then Mubeen, you can add if you want.
Yeah, not a problem at all, Sarah. In terms of budgets, an interesting challenge which has come through in conversations that we're having with D&I professionals is taking a look at where you would have typically been spending money before all of this happened. It's taking a look at everything that would have impacted L&D, that would have impacted D&I. Some organizations are coming back and actually realizing that there are huge savings from travel, from expenses, from other areas where they're not actually spending. So part of this is using that diversity of thought, a much wider lens, and being able to challenge and being able to go back and actually talk about the actual impact in terms of what you're doing. Secondly, certain things actually might be more cost efficient right now in terms of what you would be spending because in the manner of its delivery, and if the technology and the platforms are already existing, you might be able to achieve certain things. For instance, online programs or things that are happening from a digital engagement perspective that might actually be more efficient from a cost perspective. So definitely consider that.
I think,
Right.
yeah, I think, you know, D&I can be viewed as a soft topic by some people when there's bigger, more pressing things that affect the bottom line. But essentially, it's, you know, all the things we know around that actually, you know, it does affect the bottom line in the sense of losing key talent and just diversity of thought on board levels and all the stuff we do know. There is a business case. The problem is convincing people at the top that it still deserves a place at the table and it can't be forgotten about as a soft topic, like can't be viewed as a soft topic because of, you know, we've come this far in how much momentum's been happening, and it's kind of like the onus is essentially on us to keep it at the forefront in a sense, and keep it like the priority of that up so that we don't actually go backwards, which could happen based on the change at the moment. Does that make sense?
Brilliant, thank you. Next question is, I've collected ethnicity data within my company. Do you have any guidance on what to do with this data?
So we have lots of, like normally we advise people on where the barriers are around collecting data. So it's great that you've got data. It depends sort of how you broke down your data to what you do next. We normally advise that it's used to influence different areas on how to improve the organization. So, and is there any particular sense that question was coming from, like any angle? Because it's great that you've got the data. What we're seeing is we're seeing a lot of people voluntarily reporting back and making that public about where their organization is on ethnicity. But it's also used as a way to improve really. But if you want to speak separately to me, or if anyone does it at the moment about different areas where they need help with, then do get in touch, because we've done quite a lot of work on this. So it'd be good to know exactly what you're trying to achieve and a bit more information on that.
Yeah, I have got a bit more information on that. We have data from recruitment in terms of breakdown of ethnicity, and also promotion broken down by ethnicity. So that's obviously what they were referring to.
Okay, so what we've seen, and Mubeen, you've like done stuff within, well, Lloyds have done a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It's about reporting back, looking at areas where figures are low and not representative, and addressing that in some way. And, you know, that's either through putting in measures or making it more accountable. Mubeen, do you want to add anything Lloyds have done on that?
Yeah, so, you know, you can cut data. First of all, cutting data in so many different ways, you see so many different things as well. I think it's trying to understand what your purpose is for the data, and actually trying to understand where your root causes are. But then exactly how Sarah just mentioned, it's then about applying the right interventions to kind of see the progression of change. Because sometimes at lower grades, you see more BAME, and as you go through the ranks, you kind of see less BAME representations. It's about what's the career journey like for a colleague. Sometimes you see a lot of people kind of at a certain grade, and then it just suddenly drops off as well. So you want to be understanding that as well. But I think sometimes behind data, some of the powerful things that you could do is understanding the why, and actually encouraging focus sessions. And I know Sarah talks about we don't tell me anything sessions, but there's nothing more than actually the verbatim comments behind some data that gives you the real valuable essence to kind of know what you want to do as an organization. That will be different. Yeah.
And, you know, getting anonymous feedback on lived experiences. We've heard there's various different ways, but that can be really powerful to supplement just the figures, because it's hearts and minds. So it gives more of a richer sort of, you know, purpose behind it. And also, you know, you can say like the figures are bad. So just echoing what Mubeen said, the figures are bad in certain areas, but until you find out the why behind it, you can't actually put measures in place to sort of counteract that.
Brilliant, thank you. Next question is, any recommendations for good ethnicity training tools to roll out firm-wide?
So basically, we're looking to put our future leaders' career progression stuff online and do it remotely until we know more information about if this lockdown is going to be, you know, an end goal for this. So we're looking to move a lot of our training online. I would recommend like people signing up to it and get in touch with Margaret if you are interested or you know people within your organisation who benefit. It was successful last year. It looks at all different areas, and I know Mubeen's mentioned career confidence, but it also looks at focusing on yourself and a career plan, and giving some tools of how to navigate organisations. And I think we've probably put a lens on that around dealing with change as well.
Okay, brilliant.
Yeah.
Any feedback on how to attract and retain allies? Have you got anything on that?
We have done, so the beginning of this year, we did quite a lot of work on it. I know Lloyd's done quite a lot on it as well, but just separately, we interviewed a lot of different organisations, and we're in the process of producing a guide, which is for everybody. So we believe everyone should be an ally, and we wanted to give a checklist of recommendations of what that looks like, because we found that as much as people say they want to do it and become an ally, it's like, what's next? What do they need to do? So we interviewed different employers, different people who are passionate about this topic area and what that should look like. And that's something we're going to release in the summer, which is quite exciting. We were going to release it as part of the executive breakfast, which we're looking to change on what that looks like. But if you're in touch with Margaret, we'll make sure you are up to date on all the information that goes out. But Lloyds, I think, have been doing quite a lot around allies on ethnicity.
Yeah.
But you call them.
Yeah, we have indeed, and it's an amazing journey, because you kind of have peaks and troughs in terms of the amount of people that are engaged and the disengagement when you have unprecedented times like this moment. But I think exactly how Sarah said, you need to have a bit of a checklist to kind of keep them on I want to say the straight and narrow, but the engaged with what we're trying to achieve. What's the benefit to them? Because I think the biggest thing for most people, and it's a human trait, right, is what's in it for me. Because if I understand the benefit and the why, then I'm more likely to retain my services and support something. I think the important part is making it part of the everyday for an ally. So not trying to create a new version or a new work stream of activity, but if they can embed it as part of some activity that they're doing already, it becomes an easier task to be an ally. Because all they've got to do is just make sure they're thinking about it, and it's bringing it to the more conscious state of what they do every day.
Yeah, and I think the things we talked about in those sessions before as well is looking at making people more comfortable about having conversations and language, and like improving engagement and different ways to do that. Also calling out sort of microaggressions and bad behaviour within organisations, what those scenarios look like. And just, how people should, like everyone, there's an onus on everyone and a responsibility to step up and do certain like basic level requisite stuff well. And then that's how we change culture and make things better.
So I'm aware of the time. We do have a number of questions that we haven't really got time to answer in this session, and people are starting to drop away, probably with other calls and so on. So we will pick up on these and we will answer these as a follow-up. But probably the last, it's not a question, it's actually a comment that's come into the Q&A box, is actually from Amir at Burberry, who says, not a question, a comment. Great work. This seems comprehensive and a good starting point for companies to take lead. We'll follow up with your team separately. So thank you for that feedback, Amir. That's a good positive note to end the Q&A session on, I think.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you to Fiona, Huma, Mubeen for joining us. We are planning to do more, but I would suggest that anyone who wants to get in touch, there's Margaret's email there, or you can email myself. But even if you want to talk about how to progress this agenda, maybe brainstorm some ideas, because I think now is a time to collaborate and it's time to be adaptable and think of different ways that we can help support our colleagues and keep this on the agenda, at least if we're not just progressing it. Thank you.